Hi boys and girls, it's me Butch. My name is Terry David Silvercloud. I'm 73 years old. I'm into photography. In my old age I'm into painting in oils and acrylics. And I'm into theoretical physics at the subatomic level. So today, because I try to keep busy because I live alone and I got nothing better to do. I make videos, and today I want to talk about the Skull and Crossbones, and you will be familiar with, you see it there? You get the idea. Everybody knows the Skull and Bones, so what I'm going to talk about today is where did they come from? So the skull and the crossbones are those of Jacques de Molay. Maybe you can see his name written up there somewhere. Can you see it? I gotta move that way. Anyhow, Jacques de Molay, and he was the Grand Master of the Knights Templar. And on March 19, 1314, early in the morning in Paris, he was placed upon a grill, and the grill was placed upon a bed of red-hot charcoals, and he was roasted alive. And this was witnessed by King Phillip IV of France and Clement V, who was the Pope. So how did this old dude, he was in his 70s, probably about 73, I'm 73, about my age, how did this old dude come to be roasted alive on March 19, 1314, and who was Jacques de Molay? He was the Grand Master of the Knights Templar. And that day was basically the beginning of the end, if it hadn't started already, of the Knights Templar everywhere. So a little bit of quick history. In 1307, Phillip IV was the new king of northern France. He'd inherited a war with England, which had been going on since forever, like 100 years or so. And he was broke, and he discovered that the Templars were stinking rich when he hid out one time in the Paris Temple. The Templars were a military organization who handled money and loans, and they brought the number system we know today, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the Indian number system. They introduced it to Europe because they used to do banking. But anyhow, King Philip IV of France was the king in 1307 when Edward III became the new king of England, and I don't know if it was coincidental or not, but that same year, I guess Philip realized that he had a really weak English king that he didn't need to be too worried about, and if he could just get some cash together, he might be able to do something. And the Pope at the time was Clement V. And Clement V came to be Pope because when Philip IV became King of France, the Pope was Boniface VIII, and Philip and Boniface didn't get along very well, and one time it was reported the king sent some of his men to beat Boniface up, and word got out that you just don't beat the Pope up. So strangely and interestingly enough, Boniface had something bad to eat and died shortly thereafter. So 2 more popes were elected, and they weren't to Philip IV's liking either, and they seemed to have had something bad to eat, and they didn't last very long. So within a very short space of time, Rome went through 3 popes, and they all knew that if they didn't elect somebody that Philip IV liked, that odds were pretty good that they couldn't eat anything or it might kill them. So the story goes, the cardinals asked Philip who they wanted, and he picked some obscure monk from Nowhereville, and he became Clement V. And even though Clement V was the puppet pope of Philip IV, he was the pope now. I'm the pope. So what happens in 1307? Remember, Edward III just came to power in England, and Philip knew the Templars had money if he could just lay his hands on some of it, because he'd seen it when he took refuge in their temple, and apparently the Templars blackballed him and threw him naked onto the street because they found them too disgusting. So Philip and the Templars had a bit of a tiff going anyway, and you just didn't mess with the Templars. They only answered to the Pope. So it kind of put Philip in a bit of a tickle. So on Friday, October the 13th, that's where Friday, October the 13th comes from, he ordered the arrest of all Knights Templar in France on Friday, October the 13th, 1307. And he got most of them, except he didn't get any of them really, except about 200 of the older knights, including the Grand Master himself. So they were all arrested, and then Clement got word of this, and he said, "Oh, you can't be doing that. They're my men, and you need to have a proper inquisition, and you just can't be doing that. There's going to have to be trials, and there's going to have to be this and that." And so by 1310, Philip was getting a bit tired of all this, and he had 54 of the knights burned alive in one big bonfire just to get that out of the way. And he just did it and said, "Screw everybody, I'm burning them." And so 54 knights were burned alive, and the trials dragged on and on and on, and now we're coming up to the Skull and Bones again in the year 1314. They realized they were never going to find the treasure. On the morning of the 14th, 1307, remember Philip ordered the arrest of all the knights on Friday, October the 13th. They just all vanished, and so did their navy of 200 ships. And the Templars and their treasures were not to be seen again. Up to 1314, they've tried torturing lots of knights, and even the old dude, the Grand Master, and the king finally thought he'd reached a deal with the just to settle this whole thing once and for all, that the Grand Master would appear on the steps of Notre Dame and confess his sins of homosexuality and just anything they could dream up that he was going to be guilty of, that they'd probably let him off with a house arrest or something. And instead of confessing his sins, the Grand Master apparently got up and went into a tirade against the Pope and the King that didn't go over very well, accusing them of, basically being Satan and the devil combined or something to that effect. And so the King and the Pope, they weren't too thrilled about this. And so the next morning, to make sure his death was as painful and slow as possible, the Grand Master was roasted alive in Paris, March 19th, 1314. So afterwards, nobody wanted to recover his body because everybody was terrified of the King and the Pope anyway. But he was roasted alive on the grounds where the monks basically were, that I guess were associated with Notre Dame. And the story goes that the monks recovered his skull in his crossbones, his thigh bones, and they are the Skull and Bones. And you can understand through history how the Roman Catholic Church would want to completely associate Jacques de Molay and the Knights Templar with everything evil from then on. The jack-o'-lantern from Halloween is basically the same thing. It's from the French Jack in the Lantern, or Jacques burning, just twisting the French for Jack burning. It's the same. It's the same Jacques de Molay, the Grand Master of the Knights Templar. So it was in the interest of. Now I don't know if my camera's frozen up or not. Maybe it did. Oh, you're still there. Y'all went frozen on me there. Maybe it did. I don't know. Sometimes the wiring in this little setup is a bit funky, and my little computer's seen better days. Got a cracked screen. I can see I go drift in and out of focus there as the camera says, who do I focus on here? So the only other thing, because I know I've gone on for 10 minutes, nearly 11 minutes already, and I just go on and on and on. What you need to know is that the Skull and Crossbone, jeez, wake up, David. The Skull and Crossbones, what planet am I on, are extremely important to the Freemasons. And if you examine Masonic aprons, you'll often see the skull and crossbones, which are the skull and bones of the Grand Master. So the Roman Catholic Church and the Templars went to war back on Friday, October the 13th, 1307, and definitely at war after the Grand Master was roasted alive. So to the Freemasons, the most important dates are Friday, October the 13th, especially when it's a Friday. When October the 13th occurs on a Friday, that's particularly important to them. And March 19th is particularly important to all Freemasons. You will note that the cornerstone of the White House was laid on Friday, October the 13th, with 6 Freemasons in full Masonic gear, Washington and the rest of them, when the cornerstone of the White House was laid. Because, October the 13th is such a significant date. And it's also a signal to the war that continues to this day between the Freemasons and the Roman Catholic Church. Up until 1984, the doctrine of faith of the Roman Catholic Church said that if you practiced Freemasonry, you were basically going straight to hell. It didn't maybe say it in those exact words, but Ratzinger, who became the Pope, he was in charge of rewriting the doctrine of faith. And after 1984, what the doctrine of faith for the Roman Catholic Church says is if you participate in Freemasonry, you may not partake of the sacraments. So basically you're going to hell anyway. In other words, you cannot take part in communion. So all those Shriners riding around in their little mini cars with the red fez hats, they're Freemasons. They're all going to hell according to the Roman Catholic Church. So you cannot really be a practicing Roman Catholic and be a Freemason. This war is still going on to this very day, and it's very real to certain people in the church and people involved in Freemasonry. You might remember that the bombs fell on Iraq on March 19th when a very high-up Freemason was the president. That date they could have picked another date, but since it was handy, that being a Mason and wanting to demonstrate your power to the world, then the bombs fell on Iraq on March 19th. I kept telling everybody around me the bombs aren't going to fall to that, and I got, ha, told you so. I also predicted that Trump would become president. You folks deserve a Trump. You gotta wake up, folks. Anyhow, so the skull and bones are those of Jacques de Molay, the Grand Master of the Knights Templar, and they came into existence in March 19, 1314, and I'm up to nearly 15 minutes, and I just go on and on and on and on. I just like to make videos and let you know I'm still alive. I'm still alive! I live alone. I talk to the wall sometimes. I got nothing better to do. So Butchie Pooh's going to say bye-bye. It's bye from Butch. And then I've got to put my cursor on that red thing there and go click.